our strength that Texas could probably buy both of those.
You know, one of the things that I've always loved about Texas is the small towns. Now, these small towns are scattered all over Texas. Those were really our strength. I mean, you know, World War I and World War II, those towns provided the soldiers, they provided our strength. And if I'm kind of the old song, you know, how you going to keep them on the farm after they've seen L.A.? To me, the cities are simply concentration camps. They are ghettos. They're trying to drive the people out of the farm. During the Depression, 30% of Americans lived on farms or ranches and worked on farms and ranches. Today, that's down to 2%, and those little towns have dried up, and you drive 30 miles now to go to the nearest Walmart.
Well, you know, we're in the publishing business. You've been in the business for years before, probably before I was.
Yes, sir.
And like, I don't appreciate having to buy paper from Canada. I really don't. And I haven't got anything against Canadians, but we grow cotton in Texas, and we should be growing hemp. And cotton and hemp paper is what I want to put my books on because it doesn't yellow.
That's right.
And it doesn't jam up my machines.
By the way, the Encyclopedia Britannica was printed for 100 years on hemp. But hey, you can't have that. Somebody might smoke it.
More power to them as far as that side of it. But I don't necessarily need to be buying my paper from Canada. But right now, a ream of cotton paper is $11, and a ream of trash from Canada is $2. So what are you going to do? Well, we got to turn it around. We got to create a market for cotton paper and hemp paper, and you do that by not carting off all the cotton bolls and all that stuff. You take it locally and you process locally and you supply locally, and you created a new market and you created a local market, and you're going to do it just as inexpensive because you're not going to have the freight involved. You're not going to have the, you know, there's most of your paper costs even now is freight. Very little is actually paper. You freight all the trees up to the mills, and then freight all the pulp over to the paper mill side of it. Then they got to truck it all back out here to the customer. There's a lot of freight in just in a piece of paper. Creating a local economy for paper, it's gone. You know, that's reduced probably by 90%. It's just common sense things you got to get back to.
If hemp was grown on a farm outside of the town, you could run all the paper, make all the paper right off of that right there, and employ America, employ Texans to do that, couldn't you?
Yeah, I read up on why they left hemp as far as paper, and it was because of the cost of the freight, because the hemp weighs a whole lot more than the tree stuff. But they just ignored the fact that you could have done it locally and kept more people at work for what you call a non-critical, it's not a necessity item. It's more or less a luxury except for certain industries. There's no reason to be getting everything out of Canada or China or wherever this paper's coming from. Nowadays, most of ours comes from Canada that I buy.
10,000 products are made out of hemp, and we got to buy it from Red China. That doesn't seem right to me.
Well, it doesn't seem right to me that Idaho grows potatoes, but our potatoes are coming from Brazil. You know, there's a lot of things that aren't making sense in this world that I don't think that Arizona or Texas or California on their own would stand for. We're being meandered by a government that is not a nation. You know, everybody thinks the United States is a nation. It's not a nation. It never was. Never was supposed to be. It's kind of like a United Nations, where 50 different nations join together to create a single government to protect their security from armed invasion. And that's all it was ever meant to be. You know, I was on an interview this week with a local TV station who wanted to talk about secession. He goes, but it's already been ruled in courts that secession is illegal. No, it hasn't. It's never been brought to court. And he brings up a court case called Texas versus White. Well, Texas versus White was not about secession. It was about bonds that the United States did not want to pay. And Texas, the military government, so remember during that period of time, the government in Texas was an occupation government installed by the United States federal government. It was not a Texas government. And they were suing to keep the bonds from being paid. It had nothing to do with the secession argument. So some judge rules on succession in a totally unrelated case.
Or slavery, for that matter. The Civil War was not about slavery. It was about trying to divide this country, and they turned the South and Texas into a military occupation, didn't they?
You know, originally it started over income taxes and how they were to be distributed and collected. You know, I've got a copy of the 1861 tax manual for the federal government. It is unbelievable. It is unreal. We think we have it bad now with some of the taxes we got. Yes, so they were having to pay. And that's why they went to war, because, again, you had the rich North, or the elitists of the country, pushing their agendas against the poor.
Now,
the ones that could, at least able to protect themselves against it.
You know, I made the statement a couple of times. I said, you know, I am from Texas, and, you know, I still remember the Alamo, and I'll also always remember Waco, something that should have never happened. And, but I just interviewed the lady from Gonzales. Come and Take It Now. Texas nationalist movement was down there, wasn't it? How was that celebration? And did that send a message to any of the illegals in Texas? I know Arizona sent them a message, and we still don't know quite how that's going to play out. We'll know in November, probably.
Well, probably the one in Gonzales didn't particularly address the illegal issue, but did address a lot of the Texans that have been hunting for us. So a lot of people in Texas know that this is going on, and they're hunting for our organization because they didn't know where it was at, or where to find us. Because, you know, we're on the net, we're advertising constantly, but still people want to know. And we address a lot of that. Now, as far as that illegal immigrant issue, Texas has its own solution to that. Texas would have solved that problem 100 years ago had the United States not been in charge of it. We do have a problem with illegal aliens coming up here, and we have a need for certain documented Mexicans to come up here and work it from time to time. That would have been solved 100 years ago between Texas and Mexico with either an open border agreement or a closed border agreement between the two countries, and probably Mexico's problems would have been solved and Texas' problems would have been solved for a lot of different things besides just the border. The United States has caused more trouble on the border than it has solved. And that's one reason we need to get out. You know, Texas has politicians right now in Austin that are far more common sense oriented than anything that's ever gone into Washington. And for some reason we'll send up a good Texan up to Washington to change things, get it straightened out, and they come back federalized. I'm not kidding you. They come back federalized instead of being Texans. And time after time we'll send one up there to be our senator, be our representative, and the minute they get up there, they quit talking about what's for Texas and start talking about the federal agendas and the party agendas and stuff you didn't vote for them for. Well, we don't need the extra, you know, they're 1,000 miles away from Austin, probably 1,500 miles away from Phoenix, and they have no idea what is going on and the needs and the problems in those two areas by themselves. And they're probably 2,000 miles away from Sacramento. They have no clue in Washington, D.C. what's going on. To pass that, I call it Pelosi care. A lot of people call it Obamacare. I still think it was all Pelosi's writings that puts a burden like that on the individual person.